You think I murdered those other guys, too, huh? Oh, what was it, 10 or 12 of them?
We're asking about Davis.
You think I killed him? Well, tell me the truth, do you? You think I murdered Davis?
Yeah, I think you did, Henry.
Hey gang, Uncle Todd and Sonny here, and it's another film noir-ish kind of episode. Well, this is TV. We're going to take a look at an episode of the first season of Dragnet from the 50s. You're familiar with the Dragnet from the 60s. This will look a lot different to you, not just being black and white. The deliveries aren't quite as campy as it became in the 60s, when that very clipped type of delivery had been parodied so much at that point that it came off as a bit campish. Also, Harry Morgan was not yet a part of the show. That would come in the 60s. Originally, Jack Webb's original partner was played by Barton Yarborough, who had played, I believe his name was Ben Ramiro, on the radio series. But after the second episode had been filmed, he died of a heart attack suddenly. He'd been ill for some time. Then we got a kind of a rotating list of partners. The one most seen was played by Barney Phillips, but after this season he was let go. He had an annoying habit of licking his lips, which kind of made it difficult for reaction shots. And it was in the next season that Frank Smith was introduced, played by Ben Alexander, and he became the permanent partner. He was also the comedy relief for the show. It didn't really have much comedy with the other partners. If you've seen the 60s Dragnet, same kind of thing. Usually in the beginning or the end of an episode would be the bit of comedy back and forth between the two characters. Now I went with this one called The Big Cast, which is a bit of a joke title because there's only 3 characters in it. But I picked it because Lee Marvin is playing a homicidal maniac, and he gives quite the performance. As usual with Dragnet, we open with his famous narration.
This is the city.
Doesn't that just give you the shivers just hearing him? The subject of this one is about records.
Keep records on all of it. Progress, money, success, and failure.
After a few more anecdotes about record keeping, we get to the meat of the episode.
A 30-year-old man had disappeared suddenly. We'd uncovered evidence of foul play. The list of suspects was narrowed down to one man, the last person to see the victim alive.
He's disappointed the tree's gone. I gotta stop doing that. Anyway, you now get one of the few rare action scenes from Dragnet. You didn't see it very often on the 60s TV show, but they had a lot of fistfights, at least 2 to 3 per season back in the 50s. They used them sparingly so they'd have more impact when they happened.
Yeah?
Police officers, your name Henry Ross?
It's you, though.
Get in there. Watch it in.
That's quite a fight. That shot where you see Webb punching at the screen like that. That became a standard for him. He would use occasionally. Sometimes it would be a gun pointed right at the screen, but very effective. Back in the 50s, especially first couple seasons, Webb experimented with camera angles and things, something he really didn't do that much in the 60s. He was shooting in the 60s. I mean, if you've ever seen the show, everything is very quick cuts and just standard shots, big close-ups, wide shots, nothing really fancy. But in the 50s, he experimented and came with some really interesting stuff. It's easy to see why he was considered such a groundbreaking artist in the 50s. Well, after the suspect, Henry Ross, is handcuffed, he gives one of the lamest excuses ever.
You guys really cops? No fooling, are you cops? I thought you were faking.
I showed you my card at the door.
Yeah, I thought you were faking, that's the truth. There's a couple of guys out to muss me up, and I thought you were them.
So they take him downtown and they start questioning him about the missing person, a man named Davis. But they're not really getting anywhere with Mr. Ross.
I'll tell you the truth, I just don't know what you're getting at. I think I knew a guy named Davis, and that's about as far as it goes.
They do notice he's got an oddly nervous habit he's doing during this interrogation.
8 men have disappeared from around here in the last 14 months, just like Davis.
Now we're getting to the nitty-gritty of it. They've gone over the evidence they have so far. Davis left home at a particular time. He had a particular car. A guy matching Ross's description was seen with him. Davis disappeared. The car ended up being sold. On the pink slip, they have the signature of Mr. Davis and another person whose handwriting matches Ross's. And there's also a letter sent to the wife explaining that he'd had his friend write the letter to her because he had gotten hurt. And then we get this information drop about 8 other men that have been missing that are similar to the disappearance of Davis. And then we get another little tidbit about the fact of Ross having said he never used another name.
Now, you told us that you never used an alias, is that right?
Well, all right, I have. Well, I didn't know what you were getting at. I didn't figure it was any use in dragging out dirty laundry again.
I asked you if you ever used the name Henry Carter.
Okay, I used it. It's a common name.
Amazing. He just happened to have, as an alias, the same name that was put on the pink slip. And there are witnesses that said they've seen him in that area. Well, he doesn't seem too upset, and he sums it up pretty nicely.
People who saw you up there.
What's it prove? 10 people, some handwriting samples. You can't build a case on that. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, it does look a little flimsy, but it also gives them the big one of why they can't really prove anything.
And you know as well as I do, there's only one way to prove it.
Yeah?
Find his body.
Yeah. Well, eventually Friday asks if he would care to take a polygraph. Why not? He does. Then they go back to questioning, where Davis seems to show a odd interest in murder cases.
That a hobby of yours, Henry? Collecting murder stories?
No, I just read them. I remember them. Guess I can remember every murder case in the past 15 years.
That's so.
Well, sure, just about all of them. I guess it's kind of a hobby. I get a big kick out of it.
Did you like that stuff with the eyes? Yeah. Actually, that little thing went on a little longer, and there were also close-ups of his mouth at times. So, very interesting way to set a certain mood there. As I said before, Webb experimented a lot back in the early days. and it really helps visually with the storytelling. But now, it's time for the polygraph results.
You lied, Henry. 16 times.
Is that right? Yeah, but I told him to get a new machine. I lied all the way through.
Okay, so there's a bit of humor in this episode. Well, with that out, Henry decides might as well tell it all. But he insists on going to his favorite restaurant, a health food place, where, in an almost matter-of-fact way of talking, gives one of the most bone-chilling confessions I think I've ever seen.
How'd it happen?
Well, there again, it's just what I was saying. There's no reason behind it. I needed a few bucks, and this Davis came along. I guess he was it. Killing him. Maybe that gives you an idea what I was talking about. You don't need any big reason to kill somebody. Davis had 18 bucks. Suppose I told that to a writer. Somebody killing the guy for 18 bucks. Wouldn't make much sense, huh? You tell you to never sell. You need $1 million. Beautiful woman. Good motive. Well, I picked up a 2x4 and started swinging at them. Faces. Funny thing. I knew every one of those faces.
How do you mean?
People I killed. There's only a dozen of them, really, but it seemed like there were hundreds of them. But at the same time, I kept swinging. And I saw Davis. Swung hard. Kept swinging. He didn't even make a sound. Eyes closed. He kept swinging at his head. When I came to, there he was, lying on the floor.
Those killings of yours, Henry. You got any more you want to tell us about?
I told you already. 10 or 12 of them. Pretty much the same.
When was the first one?
Oh, maybe 18 months, 2 years ago. First one wasn't any harder than the last.
Wow. Man. Doesn't that just send shivers up your spine just listening to him? Obviously, man was disturbed. 2 years and he's just killing people. Well, after one of Jack Webb's patented bon mots, we cut to the results of Mr. Ross's trial.
The suspect was tried and found guilty of murder in the first degree.
No asylum time for him, I guess. Oof, what an episode. You can see now why I wanted to highlight this particular one. Lee Marvin, what a performance. I've never seen someone so lackadaisical about doing such horrendous things. And that part about seeing all the faces of the people he's killed. Now, when the show hit syndication, it was still actually running on TV. And so, as was usual at that time, in order to not confuse everybody, the show was released as Badge 714 in syndication. I don't believe it wasn't until MASH when they would have a show still running and release the earlier episodes in syndication and just have the same name. One of the more interesting things about the series from the 50s was in the third season, where they gave Joe a girlfriend, played by Dorothy Abbott. I believe she was like a department store model. That was something they had back then, where you would have actual models modeling the clothes for people to see how they looked when they were moving and stuff, instead of just having them on mannequins. And I rather liked that aspect of it. It made him a little more human. I mean, you had Frank Smith, who had a wife and kids and was always talking about them. And it was nice to see Friday, spend time with someone. And there was a great episode where he killed someone for the first time in a shootout. And he's just having real trouble handling it. And because of his girlfriend, she helped him see that there was no other way. He had to do what he did. If he didn't, he'd be dead. But people didn't like that. They wanted Friday to be super cop. And so, after that one season, she was dropped. Too bad. I rather like the humanizing of him. Made for more interesting drama. But yeah, very, very good episode. I love the early Dragnet. It was really a good show. Very noirish, especially with the lighting and stuff. And the interrogations were just riveting. But of course, in the 60s, everyone's more familiar with that, where it was very campy. Especially when you got into the hippies, and he would go on his little drug tirades, or as Harry Morgan called them, his Jesus speeches. That's the main reason people still watch the revamped version. That, and it's in color. People have this strange aversion to black and white for some reason. I've never understood it. I grew up watching black and white TV shows and movies all through my childhood. But sometime in the 80s, they just started dumping all the black and white films from local stations, or they would show them colorized, which looked horrible to me. I mean, the coloration made all those films look like they were animated films. And it ruined a lot of the picture quality in my opinion, because black and white depends a lot on light and shadow, and when you put that color in it, everything was just bright. There were no shadows hardly anymore, and it just made everything look washed out to me. But that's my opinion. But yeah, if you ever get a chance to see the original Dragnet, especially the first 2 or 3 seasons, that was probably at its best. The Jump the Shark moment, I think, was the Jesus episode, in which they're investigating a statue of Jesus that was stolen right before Christmas, which they redid. A lot of the episodes in the 60s version were revamped scripts from the original, but they had new ones too. And but yeah, after that it kind of became more of a treadmill type show, where it was just all the same over and over again. And, in 54 they did make a Dragnet movie, so it was the first colorized view of Dragnet. And Jack Webb got some great monologues in that. My favorite being the one where he details exactly how much money he makes, how it's all separated into taxes, and widow and orphan funds, and insurance, and this and that and the other. And then he tells the suspect to sit down because he's about to go through $3 worth of his salary right now. Yeah, it was also the movie also showed Jack Webb's Friday losing. He never brought the suspect to justice. The man died in the hospital before they could gather all the evidence. And again, something you should check out. It's good color noir, I would call it, with some great appearances by Dennis Weaver and, oh my goodness, I've forgotten the guy who plays Paladin, Richard Boone. Good performance from Richard Boone. That was it. Well, please hit like, share, and subscribe, and stay after the credits for my favorite scene.
Built up.
What is?
Well, murder, killing somebody. Those phony stories, it's all built up. It's just cheap.
You got it wrong, Henry.
Huh?
Wait till they read you the bill.